The chamber was enormous, carved from a single piece of crystal that had taken the Kreshtar civilization 300 years to perfect. Lights from 47 different star systems filtered through its walls, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Ambassador Helena Vasquez stood in the center of the room. A small human figure surrounded by aliens who towered over her, floated above her, or coiled around their designated platforms. She had been standing there for 6 hours. Her legs ached, but she refused to show weakness. Not now. Not when everything humanity had built among the stars hung in the balance. The Chancellor's voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into thousands of languages by the neural implant behind Helena's ear. The evidence is clear. Humanity has expanded beyond acceptable boundaries. You have taken resources from systems we designated as protected. You have refused to limit your population growth. You have developed technologies that violate our treaties. Helena wanted to scream. Every charge was a lie wrapped in half-truths. Humanity had expanded into empty systems that nobody else wanted. They had taken resources from dead worlds with no native life. And the technologies? They were nothing more than better engines, more efficient solar collectors, improved medical treatments, things that helped people live better lives. We have followed every law, Helena said, her voice steady despite her anger. We have harmed no one. We have asked for nothing but the chance to exist and grow. A delegate from the Asheran species, tall and thin, with skin like polished silver, spoke next. Your very existence is a disruption. You breed too quickly. You innovate too rapidly. You question traditions that have kept the galaxy stable for 10,000 years. There it was. The real truth beneath all the official charges. Humanity was guilty of being different. Guilty of not accepting their assigned place in the galactic hierarchy. Guilty of showing other species that the old ways might not be the only ways. Helena had known this moment was coming for months. The signs had been everywhere. Trade agreements suddenly canceled. Diplomatic meetings postponed indefinitely. Human merchants reporting harassment at council stations? It had all been building to this. If you punish us for being who we are, Helena said, then you prove that this council is not about justice. It's about control. The Chancellor's face, a mass of writhing tentacles around 3 dark eyes, twisted in what might have been anger or amusement. Helena could never tell with the Kreshtar. We are not punishing you, Ambassador. We are protecting the galaxy from a species that refuses to learn its place. The vote was called. One by one, the delegates cast their decision. Helena watched the display board as it filled with symbols. Red for exile. Blue for mercy. She saw the first red symbol appear. Then another. Then 10 more. Her heart sank as the board flooded with red. 40-7 votes cast. 47 votes for exile. Not a single species had stood with humanity. Not even the ones they had helped, the ones they had traded with, the ones who had smiled and called them friends. When it mattered, when courage was needed, they had all chosen safety over justice. Humanity is hereby exiled from council space, the Chancellor announced. You have 1 standard year to withdraw all human presence from our sectors. You will retreat beyond the Perseus Arm. Any human found in council space after that deadline will be considered an invader and dealt with accordingly. The Perseus Arm. Helena almost laughed. They were being exiled to the worst region of explored space, a place where stars were sparse and resources were rumored to be worthless, a place where ancient shipwrecks drifted through empty systems, warnings to anyone foolish enough to venture there. It was a death sentence dressed up as mercy. Helena looked around the chamber one last time. She saw satisfaction on some faces, relief on others, fear on a few. They were afraid of humanity, she realized. Afraid of what humans represented, change, progress, the end of their comfortable, stagnant civilization. She would give them something to be afraid of. I have words for this council, Helena said, her voice cutting through the murmurs that had filled the chamber. You think you've ended humanity's story today? You think you've eliminated a problem? But you've made the greatest mistake in your long, proud history. The Chancellor raised one tentacle. Your time to speak has ended, human. No, Helena said. You'll hear this. You've given us exactly what we needed. Freedom, You've cut us loose from your rules, your restrictions, your small-minded fear of anything new. You've handed us an entire region of space to call our own, and you've united every human in the galaxy against a common enemy. Not an alien threat from outside, but the tyranny of the so-called civilized galaxy that fears its own shadow. She took a step forward, and several delegates moved back instinctively. We will leave your space. We will go to the Perseus Arm, and we will build something there. Something that will make your precious council look like a relic of a bygone age. When we return, and we will return, the galaxy will see what humanity can accomplish when we're free to reach our full potential. You make threats? The Chancellor said. Perhaps we should reconsider exile and choose a more permanent solution. Helena smiled. It was not a kind smile. I make no threats. I make a promise. History will remember this day, but not as the day you defeated humanity. It will remember this as the day you created your own replacement. The day you proved that the Council has grown old, fearful, and weak. And the day humanity decided to show the galaxy what the future really looks like. She turned and walked toward the exit. No one stopped her. The massive doors opened automatically, and she stepped through without looking back. Behind her, the chamber erupted in angry voices, accusations, and demands that she be arrested for her insolence. But they did nothing. They would do nothing, because deep down, beneath all their pride and power, they knew she was right. They had just made an enemy they didn't understand, and given that enemy the one thing that made humans truly dangerous, a reason to prove themselves. Helena reached her shuttle and found her assistant waiting, tears streaming down his face. Ambassador, what do we do now? She looked up at the stars visible through the viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond the Perseus Arm, humanity's future waited to be built. We go home, she said. We tell Earth what happened, and then we get to work. We have an empire to build. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the crystal chamber and the Galactic Council behind. In 1 year, every human would be gone from Council space. But Helena knew something the Council didn't understand. Sometimes being sent into the wilderness didn't destroy you. Sometimes it made you stronger than anyone thought possible. And sometimes exile was just another word for opportunity. Commander Marcus Chen stared at the readings on his display and frowned. Something was wrong with the sensor data from Sector 7. The numbers kept flickering, jumping between normal readings and complete static. Either his equipment was failing, or something out there was interfering with his scans. Run a diagnostic on the sensor array, he told his ship's AI. The Pathfinder was a small survey vessel, designed for long-range exploration in the Perseus Arm. Marcus had been doing this job for 5 years, mapping dead systems and cataloging resources that would help humanity's expansion. Diagnostic complete, the AI responded in its calm, neutral voice. All systems functioning normally. The interference appears to be external. Marcus pulled up a wider view of the sector. The Perseus Arm had surprised everyone. The Council had called it worthless, a wasteland not worth exploring. But humans had found riches here that the Council never imagined. Rare elements that made advanced technology possible. Ancient alien ruins from civilizations that predated the Council by millions of years. And best of all, no one to tell them what they could or couldn't do. 200 years had passed since the exile. The generation that remembered the Council firsthand was gone, replaced by people who had been born free. Marcus had learned about the exile in school, of course. Every human child did. But it felt like ancient history now, something that happened to other people in another age. Humanity had built something remarkable in those 2 centuries. New Terra, the capital world, housed 3 billion people in cities that reached toward the sky and burrowed deep into the ground. Fusion reactors powered everything. Genetic modifications had eliminated most diseases. AI assistants helped with every task, from flying ships to teaching children. And the military, well? The military was something the Council had forced humanity to develop. When you were exiled to empty space, you had to be ready to defend yourself. No one else would. The sensor interference suddenly resolved into a clear signal. Marcus sat up straight, his heart racing. It was a distress beacon. Someone was out there, calling for help. Identify the source, Marcus ordered. The AI processed the signal for a few seconds. The beacon signature matches Council's standard frequencies. The message is automated, repeating every 30 seconds. Translation: help us. We are under attack. Life support failing.
Out.
Marcus felt his blood run cold. A Council ship. This far out? Council vessels never came near the Perseus arm. Their charts still marked this entire region as dangerous and empty. What were they doing here? Plot and intercept course, maximum speed. Show me what we're dealing with. The Pathfinder's engines hummed to life, pushing the small ship toward the distress signal. Marcus watched his tactical display as more information came in. One Council ship, a cargo hauler by the looks of it, and 6 smaller vessels circling it like sharks around wounded prey. Identify the attacking ships, Marcus said. No match in our database. Wait, analyzing weapon signatures. Probability? 97%. Vector Raiders. Marcus had heard stories about the Vector. They were a species from beyond known space, pirates and killers, who attacked anything they found weak enough to take. The Council had fought them occasionally over the years, but mostly just avoided the regions where Vector operated. He pulled up the tactical situation and winced. The Council ship was dying. Its shields were down to 15%. Life support was failing. The Vector were taking their time, wearing down their prey before moving in for the kill. Marcus counted 23 life signs on the Council ship. 23 people about to die he could turn away. No one would blame him. The Council had exiled humanity, cast them out like garbage. Why should he risk his life for them? But Marcus knew he couldn't do that. Those were living beings about to be slaughtered. Whatever their government had done 200 years ago, they didn't deserve this. And more importantly, Marcus wasn't like the Council. He wouldn't condemn innocent people just because it was easier. Charge weapons, he said quietly. Prepare for combat. The AI hesitated, something it almost never did. Commander, we are outnumbered 6-1. The tactical computer gives us a 12% chance of survival if we engage. I know the odds, Marcus said. But we're not going to sit here and watch them die. Besides, those odds don't account for the upgrades we have. The Vector have never fought humans before. Let's show them what a mistake looks like. The Pathfinder closed the distance in seconds. Marcus didn't bother with warnings or communications. He just attacked. The first Vector ship exploded before it even knew he was there. Its shields overwhelmed by a particle beam that cut through their hull like paper. The second ship tried to turn and face him, but Marcus was already past it. His ship's AI calculating vectors and firing solutions faster than any biological brain could process. The Vector scattered, finally realizing they faced a threat. They were fast. Marcus had to give them that. But fast didn't matter when your enemy knew exactly where you were going to be. The Pathfinder's targeting system, linked directly to Marcus's neural implant, let him see the battle like a chess game. He moved, fired, moved again. The Vector tried to coordinate, tried to pin him down with crossfire. It didn't work. For minutes after the battle started, it was over. 6 Vector ships reduced to debris. The Council cargo hauler was still intact, its crew alive, but probably terrified. Marcus took a deep breath and opened a communication channel. Council vessel. This is Commander Marcus Chen of the human survey ship Pathfinder. Your attackers have been neutralized. Do you require assistance? The response came after a long pause. When the voice finally spoke, it sounded shocked and confused. Human. Did you say human? I thought we were told that humans were... It's fine, Marcus said gently. You can dock with my ship. I'll get your life support stabilized, and we can figure out what to do next. An hour later, Marcus stood in his ship's small cargo bay, looking at the 7 Council crew members he had rescued. They represented 4 different species, none of whom had ever seen a human before. They stared at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. The ship's captain, Fellner with blue fur and large eyes, stepped forward. You saved us. Why? We are Council. Your people were exiled. That was a long time ago. And it wasn't you who made that decision. You were just people who needed help. That's enough reason for me. But the way you fought, another crew member said. Your ship, your weapons. We've never seen anything like it. How did you develop such technology? 200 years of freedom, Marcus said simply. No one telling us what we could or couldn't research. No one limiting our progress because it made them uncomfortable. The council exiled us, but they also freed us from their restrictions. Turns out, humans are pretty good at innovation when you let us work without chains. The Fellner captain looked troubled. We need to report this. The Vector are becoming bolder. They've attacked dozens of ships in the past year. The Council fleet can't stop them. If what you say is true, if humans have developed such advanced capabilities, perhaps... She trailed off, but Marcus understood what she wasn't saying. Perhaps the Council needed help. Perhaps exiling humanity had been a mistake. Perhaps the galaxy was changing, and the old order couldn't keep up. You should go home, Marcus said. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans don't hold grudges, but we also don't forget. Tell them that out here, in the space they thought was worthless, we've built something they never imagined. He smiled. And tell them that when they're ready to talk to us as equals, we'll be waiting. Counselor Thezikavarn had always been curious. It was a trait that made her unusual among the Asharan, a species that valued tradition and order above all else. But Thesa had never been good at accepting things just because that was how they had always been done. She stood in the restricted archives, deep beneath the council's administrative complex, scrolling through files that were supposed to be sealed. Her position as a junior counselor gave her some access. What she was looking at now was definitely above her clearance level. She had needed to call in 3 favors and use a security exploit she probably shouldn't have known about just to get this far. The file she was reading made her sick. It was a report from 200 years ago. Written shortly after humanity's exile, the official story was that humans had been too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable to remain in council space. But this report told a different story. A true story that the council had buried. Humans had been exiled because they were threatening the established order. Not with weapons or violence, but with ideas. Human companies had been outcompeting council corporations through better efficiency and innovation. Human colonies had been attracting immigrants from other species who wanted a chance at a better life. Human philosophers and artists had been spreading concepts like individual rights and democratic government that made. Populations questioned why they accepted hereditary rulers and corporate overlords, the councils. Leadership had seen humanity as a virus that would destabilize their carefully controlled society. So they had manufactured charges, exaggerated minor incidents, and used their legal system to eliminate the threat. Not because humans had done anything wrong, but because they represented change. Thesa felt anger building in her chest. She had been taught that the council represented justice and fairness, that it protected the weak and maintained peace. But this report showed something else. It showed a system so afraid of losing power that it would destroy an entire species' future just to maintain the status quo. She copied the files to a secure drive and left the archives, her mind racing. What was she supposed to do with this information? If she released it publicly, she would be branded a traitor. Her career would be over. Her family would be shamed. But if she did nothing, she would be complicit in the same injustice that had been done to humanity. The decision was made for her 3 days later when she received the report about the Spectre attack and the human rescue. The survivor accounts had been classified immediately, but Thesa had access. She read about Commander Chen and his ship, about technology that seemed impossible, about a single human vessel destroying 6 Vector raiders in minutes. The Council's military analysts were panicking in their private communications. How had humanity advanced so far? How had they developed such capabilities? The speculation ranged from discovering ancient alien technology to making deals with unknown powers. None of them seemed to consider the obvious answer that Thesa could see clearly. Humanity had advanced, because they had been free to advance. Without the Council's restrictions and regulations, without having to ask permission for every innovation, they had simply progressed at the natural pace of an intelligent, creative species, Thesa decided to take a risk. She used a secure, encrypted channel that was normally reserved for intelligence communications and sent a message into human space. She didn't know if anyone would receive it or respond, but she had to try. The response came 2 weeks later. A woman's face appeared on her private terminal, middle-aged, with dark skin and intelligent eyes. Counselor KVARN. My name is Dr. Amara Okafor. I'm a diplomat with the Human Foreign Contact Bureau. Your message was surprising, to say the least. How can I help you? Over the following months, Thesa and Amara developed a careful friendship through encrypted communications. They shared information about their respective societies, their hopes, and their fears. Amara spoke about humanity's achievements in the Perseus Arm, about the society they had built based on freedom and innovation. Thesa shared what she had learned about the exile and about the growing problems in council space, because the problems were growing. The Vector attacks were increasing in frequency and intensity. What had started as isolated pirate raids had evolved into coordinated military strikes. Colony worlds on the Council's outer rim were going silent. Relief missions found only ruins and bodies. The Council's response was pathetically inadequate. Their military hadn't fought a real war in centuries. Most of their ships were designed for show, for intimidating primitive species into compliance. When faced with an actual military threat, they were revealed as paper tigers. Thesa watched the emergency sessions where admirals made excuses and politicians argued about budgets. She watched as worlds burned while the Council debated proper procedures for requesting reinforcements. She watched as refugees fled toward the core worlds, overwhelming stations and colonies that weren't prepared to handle them, and she watched as certain counselors, the old guard who remembered the human exile, began making suggestions that terrified her. They spoke about finding allies, about reaching out to powers they had previously shunned. But when someone suggested contacting humanity, the idea was shot down immediately. Pride. They said, dignity. The Council did not beg for help from exiles. Thesa shared all of this. With Amara during their regular communications, the diplomat listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and provided no false reassurances. The situation is worse than you think, Amara told her during one conversation. We've been monitoring vector movements. This isn't just raiding, it's a full-scale invasion. They're testing your defenses, probing for weaknesses. When they're ready, they'll push for your core worlds. How long do we have? Thesa asked. Months, maybe. A year at most. Amara's expression was grim. Your military can't stop them. You don't have the technology, the training, or the will. No offense intended, but the Council has grown soft. What would humanity do if we asked for help? Amara was quiet for a long moment. That's a complicated question. Many humans still remember the exile, still feel the sting of that rejection. There are those who would say the Council deserves what's coming, that justice is being served. But there are others, myself included, who believe we can't stand by and watch billions die just because their governments made bad decisions. So you would help. If asked properly, if certain conditions were met, yes. But understand, Thesa, humanity isn't the same species you exiled. We've grown stronger, more capable, more confident. If we intervene in council space, it won't be as supplicants begging to be let back in. It will be as equals or not at all. Thesa understood. Humanity would save the council, but the price would be change. Real change. The kind that would append the power structures that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Part of her feared that, but a larger part of her hoped for it. 3 days later, another colony world went silent. Then 2 more. The Council's military losses were mounting. Ships were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Morale was collapsing. Thesa watched as panic began to set in among the leadership. Then she intercepted a communication that made her blood run cold. A faction of hardline counselors, species who had voted for humanity's exile and still believed it was the right decision, were making their own plans. If humanity came to help, if they intervened in council space, these hardliners would use it as an opportunity. They would stage attacks, blame the humans. and turn them from saviors into invaders. They would rather let the council burn than admit they had been wrong about. Humanity Thesa knew what she had to do. She sent an urgent message to Amara, including everything she knew about the hardliner plot. Then she began gathering allies among the younger counselors. Those who hadn't been involved in the exile, who might be willing to stand up for what was right instead of what was traditional. The galaxy was about to change. Either it would change through evolution and cooperation, or it would change through blood and fire. Thesa was determined to fight for the first option. Even if it cost her everything, the message arrived at New Terra in the middle of the night, local time. It was broadcast on all official channels, marked with maximum priority. Chancellor Vexter himself appeared on screens across human space, his aged form looking smaller and weaker than most humans remembered from history recordings. "People of humanity," he began. And those 4 words sent shockwaves through every human world. The Council never addressed humans directly. They had pretended for 2 centuries that humanity didn't exist. The Galactic Council faces an existential threat. The Vector have launched a full invasion of our space. Worlds are falling. Billions are dying. We have exhausted all options available to us. He paused, and for a moment he looked like what he was, an old man watching his world crumble. "We are asking, formally and officially, for humanity's assistance. We are asking you to help us survive." The message ended there. No apology. No acknowledgement of the exile or the injustice that had been done. Just a request for help from people who were desperate enough to swallow their pride. The emergency parliament convened within hours. Representatives from every human world gathered in New Terra's legislative chamber, their faces displayed on screens that covered the walls. The debate was fierce from the first moment. "They threw us away like trash," Senator Williams from the colony of New Hope said, his voice shaking with anger. "They condemned us to die in empty space. They denied us trade, technology, basic decency. And now they want us to save them? Let them burn." "Billions of innocent people will die," Representative Chen countered. She was Marcus's aunt, a woman who had spent her career advocating for peaceful contact with other species. Children, families, people who had nothing to do with the exile. "Can we really stand by and let that happen?" "They stood by when we needed them," another senator shot back. "Every single species voted for our exile. Not one stood with us. Why should we be different?" The argument continued for hours. Isolationists versus interventionists. Those who remembered the exile's pain versus those who looked toward the future. The chamber was split almost evenly, and with every minute that passed, more council worlds fell silent. Then Fleet Admiral Sarah Kojima entered the chamber. She was 70 years old, small and thin, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded humanity's military forces for 20 years, turning them from a defensive fleet into the most capable force in known space. When she spoke, people listened. "This debate is missing the point," she said quietly, and the chamber fell silent. "The question isn't whether we help. It's on what terms we help." She walked to the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. "If the council falls, we'll eventually face the Vector alone. They won't stop at council borders. They'll keep expanding until they reach our space. Better to fight them now, with whatever allies we can preserve, than later when we're surrounded."
Ow.
"So you're saying we should help them?" an isolationist senator asked. "I'm saying we should help the galaxy," Kojima replied, "but not by propping up a failed system. The council, as it exists now, is broken, corrupt, stagnant. If we intervene just to restore the status quo, we'll be back here in another generation, facing another crisis because they learned nothing." She pulled up a holographic display showing human military assets. Hundreds of ships, thousands of fighters, weapons systems the council couldn't imagine. "We have the power to save them. But we also have the power to reshape the galaxy. My proposal is simple. We offer intervention with conditions. The council dissolves and reforms as a democratic federation. All species equal. All voices heard. Technology sharing becomes mandatory. Individual rights enshrined across all member species. I'll never agree to that, someone said. And they can face the Vector alone, Kojima said bluntly. We're not negotiating. We're presenting a choice. Evolve or die. They've been afraid of change for millennia. Well, change is here whether they like it or not. The vote was called. It was close, painfully close. In the end, the intervention passed by a margin of just 17 votes. Humanity would go to war to save the Council. But on their terms, Amara Okafor was given the job of drafting the formal response. She worked through the night, choosing every word carefully. When she transmitted it to the Council the next morning, she knew it would either save the galaxy or tear it apart. The Council's response came within hours. It wasn't from Chancellor Vexter. It was from a younger counselor named Thesa Kavarn, and it included information that made Amara's blood run cold. Hardliners within the Council were planning to use humanity's arrival as an opportunity for treachery. They would stage attacks, blame humans, turn saviors into invaders. Amara immediately forwarded the information to Admiral Kojima. The old warrior read it carefully, then smiled grimly. They never learn, do they? Fine, we'll deal with the traitors when we get there. But this changes the timeline. We need to move now. The human expeditionary fleet began assembling immediately. It was the largest military force humanity had ever deployed. 300 warships, each one more advanced than anything the Council had. 200 support vessels, carrying supplies, medical equipment, and humanitarian aid. And 50,000 soldiers ready to fight on the ground if needed. Marcus. Chen found himself transferred from survey duty to combat command. His experience with the Vector made him valuable, and he was given command of a carrier group tasked with protecting civilian transports. He stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Defiant, and looked at the tactical display showing the entire fleet. It's really happening, his first officer said quietly. We're going back. Never should have left, Marcus replied. But we did, and we survived. Now we're going to show them what we became, while they stayed the same. The fleet departed New Terra in a carefully coordinated sequence that took 2 full days. As the last ships cleared orbit, Admiral Kojima broadcast a message to all vessels. We're going to save people who don't deserve saving. We're going to protect those who once condemned us. And we're going to do it because we're better than they ever were. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we believe in something they forgot. The idea that all intelligent life has value. That justice matters more than pride. That the future belongs to those brave enough to build it, not those afraid to let it happen. She paused, looking into the camera with eyes that had seen too much war. The Council thinks we're coming as saviors. They're wrong. We're coming as builders. We're going to save them from the Vector, and then we're going to save them from themselves. This is the beginning of a new age. Make sure you're ready for it. The fleet entered quantum drive, and the stars stretched into lines of light. The journey to Council space would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. 3 weeks to get ready to face not just the Vector, but the hardliners who would rather destroy everything than accept change. In her quarters, Mara reviewed Thesa's messages one more time. The young counselor had risked everything to provide this intelligence. She had betrayed her own people to do what was right. That gave Amara hope. If even one council member could see past pride and tradition, maybe others could too. Maybe this war would end not with humanity standing over the council's ruins, but with 2 civilizations finally learning to work together. Maybe the exile, for all its pain and injustice, had been necessary to create this moment. A moment where humanity could return to the galaxy not as supplicants, but as equals. The Defiant hummed through quantum space, carrying its crew toward destiny. Behind them, the rest of the fleet followed, a force powerful enough to shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Ahead lay war, betrayal, and the chance to remake the galaxy. Marcus stood on his bridge and smiled. His ancestor had promised the Council that humanity would return. That promise was about to be kept. The human expeditionary fleet emerged from quantum drive at the edge of the Centrum Prime system and immediately knew they were arriving at the end of a civilization. The tactical displays lit up with thousands of contacts. Most were debris, the shattered remains of Council ships that had tried to defend their homeworld. Some were escape pods, drifting through space with survivors hoping for rescue. And dominating the center of the system was the Vector Armada. Hundreds of warships surrounding Centrum Prime like a noose tightening around a neck. Admiral Net, Kojima stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, and studied the tactical situation with the calm focus of someone who had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Status of Council forces. Minimal, her tactical officer reported. Maybe 30 ships still operational clustered around the planet. Life signs indicate they're running out of time. Another few hours, and they'll be overrun. And the hardliner fleet? Exactly where Counselor Kavarn said they would be. 47 ships positioned in a defensive formation, but not engaging the Vector. They're waiting for us. Kojima nodded slowly. The traitors who would rather see the Council fall than accept human help were about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Open all channels. Broadcast on every frequency, the Council and Vector use. I want everyone to hear this. When the communication officer nodded, Kojima began to speak. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried the weight of authority that came from absolute confidence. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah, Kojima of the Human Expeditionary Force. We have received a request for assistance from the Galactic Council, and we have come to provide it. But before we engage the Vector threat, we need to address another problem. She pulled up tactical data and broadcast it to all ships in the system. 47 Council vessels have positioned themselves not to fight the invaders, but to attack human forces when we engage. We have intercepted communications proving this conspiracy. They plan to stage false attacks and blame humanity for civilian casualties. They would rather let their own people die than admit they were wrong about us. The system erupted in communications chaos. The Vector seemed confused. The loyal Council forces were furious. And the hardliner fleet, exposed and condemned by their own words, faced an impossible choice. To the conspirators, Kojima continued, you have one chance to stand down. Withdraw from the system immediately, or be marked as traitors to your own civilization at its moment of greatest need. You have 60 seconds to comply. Marcus Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the countdown began. 30 seconds? 40? 50? Most of the hardliner ships began to move, their commanders choosing survival over ideology. But 5 ships held position, their weapons powering up in defiance. Target those 5 ships, Kojima ordered. Eliminate them. The human fleet didn't waste ammunition. Precise particle beams lanced out across the void, striking shield generators and engine cores with surgical precision. The 5 rebel ships died in seconds, their destruction broadcast across every channel in the system. The message was clear. Humanity would not tolerate those who valued pride over innocent lives. Then Kojima turned her attention to the real enemy. All ships, engage the Vector Armada. Show them what it means to fight humanity. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Vector outnumbered the human fleet by a significant margin, and their ships were tough, well-armed, and crewed by experienced warriors. Under normal circumstances, they should have won through sheer weight of numbers, but these were not normal circumstances. Human ships moved like dancers, their quantum drives allowing impossible maneuvers. AI systems coordinated attacks with precision that no biological command structure could match. Weapons that the galaxy had never seen tore through Vector shields and armor. Drone swarms launched from carrier ships like Marcus's Defiant, each drone thinking and adapting faster than the enemy could react. Marcus watched his tactical display. As his drones engaged a Vector battlecruiser, the enemy ship was massive, bristling with weapons. But his drones were small, fast, and intelligent. They swarmed around the battlecruiser, targeting weak points, exploiting every vulnerability. Within minutes, the great ship was dead in space. Its systems overwhelmed by attacks it couldn't track fast enough to counter. Carrier Group 3, Marcus ordered. Support the Council defensive line. Keep those civilian transports safe. His ships moved to protect the retreating Council vessels, placing themselves between the Vector and their prey. The enemy tried to push through, and discovered what humanity had learned over 2 centuries of isolation. When you couldn't rely on anyone else, you got very, very good at protecting yourself. The turning point came when Admiral Kojima executed what would later be called the Centrum Maneuver. She deliberately exposed her flagship, making it look vulnerable and isolated. The Vector, seeing a chance to decapitate human leadership, redirected massive forces to attack the Indomitable. It was a trap as the Vector ships converged. They found themselves flying into a kill zone. Human ships that had been positioned in stealth mode powered up their weapons simultaneously. Mines that had been deployed earlier activated. And the Indomitable itself, far from vulnerable, revealed weapon systems that made the attacking ships look like primitive clubs compared to plasma cannons. The Vector formation shattered. Ships tried to escape, but there was nowhere to run. Human vessels cut off every retreat path with ruthless efficiency. In the span of 20 minutes, the Vector lost a quarter of their fleet. The enemy commander finally understood what they were facing. Not prey, not even equals, but predators who had been forged in the fires of abandonment and emerged stronger than anyone imagined possible. The Vector began a general retreat, their ships fleeing the system in disorder. Kojima let them go. Do not pursue beyond system boundaries. Let them run. Let them tell their people what happened here. Humanity is not to be hunted. As the last Vector ships disappeared into quantum drive, a strange quiet fell over the Centrum Prime system. The battle was over. The Council had survived, though just barely. And humanity stood victorious in the heart of the civilization that had once cast them out. Chancellor. Vexther's face appeared on the main display. He looked old, tired, and broken. Admiral Kojima, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our deepest gratitude. You have saved us when we had no right to expect salvation.
Ow.
We didn't save you for gratitude, Kojima replied. We saved you because it was right. Because billions of innocent lives matter more than old grudges. But understand this clearly, Chancellor. The galaxy you knew is over. What comes next will be different. Within a week, the negotiations began. Thesa Kavarn, hailed as a hero for her role in exposing the conspiracy, became the leading voice for reform. The old Chancellor resigned, his legacy forever tainted by weakness and the revelation of the hardliner plot. And in the same crystal chamber where Helena Vasquez had been condemned 200 years earlier, a new agreement was signed. The Galactic Council dissolved. In its place rose the Galactic Federation, a democratic union where every member species had equal voice and vote. The old hierarchies were abolished. Technology sharing became mandatory, ensuring that no species would be artificially held back. And individual rights were enshrined in the founding charter, applying to every citizen regardless of species. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. There were species who resisted, who longed for the old days of clear hierarchies and comfortable certainty. But the majority saw the truth that Thesa and others like her had been trying to teach. The galaxy had grown stagnant under the Council's rule. Humanity's exile hadn't weakened them. It had freed them to show what was possible. The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Amara Okafor stood next to Thesa Kavarn, 2 diplomats who had risked everything for a future they believed in. Admiral Kojima stood with representatives from a dozen species, who had fought beside humanity in the battle for Centrum Prime. And in the back of the chamber, elderly and frail but present, was Helena Vasquez, who had lived just long enough to see her defiant prophecy fulfilled. Kojima was given the honor of the closing address. She stood where Helena had stood centuries before, but the audience was different now. Not hostile, but hopeful. Not afraid, but curious about what came next. 200 years ago, Kojima began, your predecessors made a choice based on fear. They saw humanity's potential and decided it was a threat. They exiled us to space, they considered worthless, hoping we would fade away and be forgotten. They were wrong about everything.
She
gestured to the displays showing human achievements. In the Perseus arm, he gave us exactly what we needed. Freedom. The chance to become who we truly were without artificial limits. You meant it as punishment. We chose to see it as opportunity. And now we stand here together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building something better. Kojima's expression softened slightly. I won't lie and say there isn't anger among humans for what was done. There is, but there's also hope. Hope that we can build a civilization based not on maintaining power, but on lifting everyone up. Not on controlling innovation, but on celebrating it. Not on fearing change, but on embracing the future. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of worlds. The council tried to exile humanity into obscurity. Instead, you gave us the chance to grow beyond your limitations. You meant it as the end of our story. It was actually just the beginning. And now, together, we'll write the next chapter. Welcome to the Galactic Federation. Welcome to the age that humanity was always meant to help create. The chamber erupted in approval, not the grudging acceptance of the defeated, but genuine enthusiasm from people who finally saw a path forward. In the back, Helena Vasquez smiled. Her journey was complete. The exile was over. And humanity had finally come home, not as supplicants begging to return, but as leaders showing the way forward. Marcus Chen watched the ceremony from orbit, standing on the bridge of the Defiant with his crew. So what do we do now? His first officer asked. Marcus thought about it for a moment, then smiled. We keep exploring. Keep pushing forward. Keep showing the galaxy what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations. That's what humans do. The Defiant's engines hummed to life, carrying the ship back toward the Perseus arm. Behind them, a new age was beginning. Ahead lay infinite possibilities. And humanity, forged in exile and tempered by adversity, was finally ready to show the galaxy what they could accomplish when fear stepped aside and let potential flourish. The story of exile had ended. The story of the future had just begun.